Hello and welcome to a new series where today I'm going to be starting on a brand new Minecraft 1.21 world of a bunch of my closest friends, and in this series I'm going to be going back to the basics and really just trying to take it slow and just enjoy the game. You've probably seen a lot of it lately, this trend of videos around people kind of just wanting to go back to the basics of Minecraft and just not rush through every element as quick as possible, and to be honest, I can relate to that quite a lot. I'm not exactly burnt out with the game, but if I'm completely honest with myself, I have definitely fallen into that trap of just trying to build bigger and better every time and kind of rush through and skip a lot of those fun aspects, particularly of that early gameplay. But today is where I'm just going to be going back around, hopefully in a full circle, and I want to revisit some of the things in the game that I've just not really tackled or even really bothered with for quite some time. That stuff like not flying around everywhere on Elytra, and I don't know, maybe going back to the good old days of horseback riding across the world, or building up great railway systems to link up different parts of the world. And I'm going to be avoiding a lot more of those mega builds that I've previously focused on a lot on in previous series. I'm just going to go back to the basics and just focus on smaller builds that hopefully tell a bit more of a story and that have a real purpose on this world to make it feel more joined up. But to make things even more interesting, I'm actually going to be basing up with one of my best friends in real life, known in the game as Mr. Unknown. So the pair of us together should hopefully make for a bit of a fun and unique combination. And we haven't actually played together in actually at least a couple of years now, so it's going to be really fun to play again with him and see what we can achieve together. But as the first full night approached, I was quickly reminded of just how terrifying it is when you have no bed to sleep away the night, no armor to protect yourself with, and no real source of food to keep yourself saturated and healed from the mobs that are stalking you in the dark. And all you really have to do is keep your wits about you, try and avoid getting blown up by creepers, shot by skeletons, or just generally mobbed by zombies. But you can either really just hide away in a dirt hut, or you can try and keep moving and survive through into the day. And thankfully, I made it through almost completely unscathed to do a bit of fishing and then cook some fish up here on this fire at Wraithflin's little starter area that he has got going here. And then I started doing some early exploring. Now, straight up, really off the bat, really, is looking up at this mountain, which is just right by spawn. And honestly, it is beautiful. This seed actually is possibly one of my favorite ones to date. And I found it completely by chance when I was exploring possible seeds for this new world. And it is just incredible. So I had to really take myself up this mountain. And while it worked out really well, as I'd already forgotten just how much iron and coal you can also find pretty much exposed out in the open. So it is quite perfect in those early game stages just to get up these resources quite fast without having to really make your way down into any mine straight away. So I was able to just take in the views of the surroundings and just casually chip away at these pieces of iron and coal that were just hanging around, ripe for the picking. The first death really was inevitable to happen sooner or later. It's one of the reasons why I'll probably never play hardcore as well. I always have the stupid deaths, and this one is no exception, as I thought I'd be clever and try and steal one of the villagers' beds here in this little village next to the mountain, but the creeper that you saw here, he followed me into the hut, and well, karma struck as he killed both me and the villager and pretty much blew up the whole of the hut. But thankfully, I hadn't actually lost any much stuff, and I was able to gather up pretty much all of my items. And I then did the typical thing of, well, looting up some of the hay. It's like I hadn't really learned my lesson, but I desperately needed that hay so that I could make up some bread to keep myself going for a while. But it was at that point that I actually joined my friend Eden for the first time. And he had actually found this little spot here on the ridge up on the top of the mountain that I'd just been exploring. And you know what? I think this is going to be a perfect place for us to start building out a bit of a starter base. So we had a couple of beds spaced down. I started adding in some cod heads, and then we had some furnaces going and a couple of chests. But I think that will be enough to get us started. And then I really just need to get us started with a solid source of food. So one of the things I quickly got to work doing was really just going around and foraging for some seeds, so that I could then build out a little wheat field. Now, the ridge at the moment is pretty stony, out here. And it's not really looking all that interesting at the moment. So I think what I really need to do is just kind of fill out the space a little bit more and hopefully greenify a little bit more and just add in some sort of planters. I'm kind of taking a little bit of inspiration from the villagers that automatically generate and just kind of build up some different planters really, just to get some crops going and give ourselves a source of food. I'm thinking probably just some wheat, maybe some carrots and potatoes and something along those lines. But I'd barely really even got started when I was rudely interrupted by a pillager raid party, and I just sort of jumped straight in really and tried to tackle them head on, and I actually forgot about the whole bad omen, and I'm actually right next to a village, so I did actually have a bit of a panic sort of midway through when I killed the captain, that I was going to be getting bad omen and triggering a raid so soon, which would probably have been, well, it would have absolutely been deadly for me this early on in the game. But then I remembered I was playing in Minecraft 1.21 and you no longer automatically get the bad omen effect. Instead, you get a ominous potion that drops, and I actually completely missed the potion drop, so I didn't actually pick it up at all. And I just got confused why I wasn't getting the effect, and when I realized, oh, it was a sigh of relief really that I didn't have to worry about any extra danger. But after that episode, me and Eden got to work and we started then planting in some wheat seeds to basically fill out the first of a few planters. So this one will be so that we can obviously get a nice renewable source of food, as at the moment we're still pretty short on the food front. With the first planter in place, we then moved on and started building out a couple more for other plants like the melon and pumpkin plants, so that we can actually have something to trade with villagers. We're not going to go too crazy on the villager front, but Eden was quite keen to get a few together so that we could get our hands on some of the common enchanted books, just the sort of typical ones like efficiency, mending and fortune, etc. A few hours actually passed since the last clip, and well, me and Eden have been pretty busy. I focused on building out a bit more of the exterior area here by building a downtrodden path, using a lot of coarse dirt and the packed mud and everything along those lines to just add in some pathways and just remove some of the stoniness that I mentioned before. And then I also built out some little lanterns just to add a little bit of natural lighting. We got in an extended wheat field and a little space to grow up some trees. And then Eden, he got a pen built up here ready to have in a load of cows and sheep for a source of leather and wool. And then really, Eden's also been really busy by starting to build out a little interior area here inside of the mountain, where he started building out some storage space and building out some pens ready to move in some villagers. It's sometimes all too easy to fall into the trap of just planning your world a little bit too much and just kind of spending too much time trying to get all the little details in place, and maybe in a creative world or in some other form. But I think it's actually important to just live more in the moment in your world, and that's something that I'm really trying hard to do this time around. So I just figured rather than messing around too much, I would just kind of see where the inspiration struck. And as it happens, there's a little area here that I thought would be perfect to just kind of expand out the path that I started building before with all this coarse dirt and the packed mud. And well, I love using packed mud in any kind of paths. It's just perfect for it. It's definitely one of my favorite blocks that Mojang added in. It's just a bit of a shame that it's so hard to get in the early game stages, but we'll probably build a bit of a farm at some point to make it a little bit easier for ourselves. But basically, what I at least had in my mind was something on the lines of maybe building a bit of a cozy seating area and a campfire where me and Eden can just kind of sit back and take in the views from the mountainside. But as is the way, I barely really got started when I got distracted, as Eden wanted to show me the success that he had with the first proper villager that he got in place. He'd only really been sort of trying to lock in the trades the first few times when he managed to get a efficiency 5 villager, which would be perfect, as we're definitely going to be needing that for all of our tools to make our lives a little bit easier. So Eden was definitely very pleased with himself, as he probably should be, but his luck didn't last long, as only really sort of shortly after that he had a little disaster, and some of his villagers escaped, and there was certainly a little bit of an amusing moment where he was scrambling around trying to get them back inside to get them in their pods. But after a while, he got them in place, and then I kind of went back to then go and start finishing off the little campfire area. Well, distraction number 2 came completely out of the blue in the form of this beautiful horse. I was completely blown away. And well, I'd been fully intending on finding a horse at some point, but honestly, I wasn't even really quite ready for it at this point. And actually, it's been so long, I couldn't even fully remember how you actually tame horses. So at first, I tried feeding her some carrots and hoping for the best, but when I had no luck, then I remembered it was something to do with trying to ride them and then hoping that they would allow you to continue doing so. But I tried for a few times with not much luck, initially with just the saddle, and then I remembered it actually had to be an empty offhand. So I tried that, and then after a few attempts, she thankfully accepted me as her rider. So I took her out for a little ride and went to go and make my way down the mountain, but then I remembered there was no real safe way of currently getting down there, and as I really don't want to risk the life of my horse, I decided I'd have to leave taking her out for a proper ride to another time until I actually started building out a bit of a sort of stairway down the mountain, down to the sort of the lower area. I've been busy, and you know what? This is exactly the sort of gameplay in Minecraft I've really been missing of late. It's just that whole thing that I mentioned before about going back to the basics and focusing on some of the sort of smaller, cozier builds, and that's exactly what I've done here. It's nothing too exciting, but it's just super cozy, and I think it's going to really set the mood and vibe for a whole mountain outcrop that we need and have going on here. And I think it's definitely sort of the style that I want to keep building on in, and just kind of keep adding and seeing what else and what fun we can have in general, and see where it all takes us really. But I've not just left it at that, I've also been really busy, and I've started building out a stairway down the mountain so that me and my horse finally can have a way up and down the mountain, as we definitely need a way to do so, as well, there's the whole spawn area that we need to get to, and we've got other players on the server that want to make their way up the mountain as well. So by adding in this stairway, we finally have a route up and down that's not too precarious. Now, I'll be honest, it's probably the most convenient thing in the world. I try to go a bit more for the aesthetic sort of look, with different height levels here, with the sort of the rickety look, should I say, with campfires, the spruce stubs and trapdoors, stairs, and the full block. So it's very uneven, it's sort of very worn and aged, but you know what? I don't even care. I just love it. And it doesn't really matter when you're on a horse anyway, because your horse can kind of just go over it, no problem at all. If you're traversing my foot, it's a little bit more finicky, but I don't really mind. I think it's going to do the trick and kind of meet the needs that we have really as a whole. As definitely later on the line, we're probably going to add in more roads and things like that, and join everything up a little bit more here on the server as the other players sort of start building out their base areas. Things are bad, really bad. Things have taken an awful turn for the worse. I was out visiting Mechachonk to see his progress with his starter home, and a creeper caught me completely off guard. And what's worse, I was actually riding my horse at the time, and after I recovered from the death, I was frantically trying to make my way back to see if my horse had actually survived, but then the news struck. It was not good. My horse hadn't made it, and although we hadn't spent that much time together, I was still devastated, as I had really been starting to enjoy navigating the world by horseback, and I really didn't know what to do with myself at that point. So as I sadly gathered up my stuff, I sort of thought back to the times I had trying to tame the horse, and she may not have been the fastest or the best jumper in the world, but she had been my horse and she was something special. So I really didn't know what to do with myself at that point. I very nearly almost quit the game to kind of recover with that loss, but I made the slow trek back up to Mine Eden's base. But then it hit me. I vaguely remember when we first actually made our way up the mountain, there may have actually been a pair of horses. Now, I don't think I'll ever be able to truly replace my loss, but I didn't want to go without a horse at this point, not after I'd already made all the effort into building up the stairway up and down the mountain. So I decided to see if I could indeed find another horse roaming along the mountain. And you know what? That was when my luck did turn around, as I found another horse. I think this might have been from that original 2 that I mentioned before. And oh my goodness, she was beautiful. She was so fast, and I was so happy that I do finally have a trusty steed once again, and this time I'm going to take no chances and try and take as much extra precaution as possible. So I think what I really need to do now is head back up to our base and actually start constructing a stable so that we at least have somewhere safe to leave our new steed when we're not actually riding her out in the wild. And I think I'll also need to think about probably some horse armor. Now, I can't remember if this is something you have to actually craft or if it's something that you'll find, but I'll sort that out. But now, for now, let's actually start figuring out what we want to do about a stable. So we actually have this area here that's currently unpopulated, and I've just kind of cleared it out, and I want to experiment and see where we go. It's actually been quite a long time since I've actually last just tried to build something really directly in the survival world without really thinking too much about it or trying to design something in any great detail in a creative world. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if I'm honest, I'm quite a perfectionist, and I struggle sometimes to just kind of go with the flow really and sort of see how things come out actually in the world. I've always just found it a little bit easier when in creative spaces just to kind of spend extra time and just get things just right. But sometimes you really don't need to worry about getting everything perfect first time. You can just keep iterating and changing and adding and as and how you really like. And that's basically all I've been doing here. I mean, first I started adding in the birch signs at the top for a little bit of detail, and then I figured it actually was too light really against the acacia logs, so I changed it to oak, and then I found I liked that much better. And that's all I'm really doing in this build full stop, is just kind of seeing what works and doesn't. I haven't really laid out a proper color palette. I haven't really done any kind of prep at all for this build. I just gathered up a few resources that I like the looks of, and then just started placing down some blocks and kind of seeing what worked and what didn't. And you know what, taking a step back really to look at it from afar like this, and I'm actually really liking how it's starting to come along. But there were still a few things that I wasn't quite sure on. Like I started adding in bricks really for the sort of wall elements of the barn, but I wasn't really so keen on it, so I decided to actually swap it out and add in the equivalent instead with the mud bricks. And I actually think that actually looks a lot better. It just goes in so much nicer with the barrels that I've got at the bottom, and I think it even ties in more with the acacia logs as well. And I swapped out the wall blocks I had as well next to the acacia logs from the brick walls to the actual new tough walls, and I think that looks much better. But the bit I always struggle with the most is roofs. I don't know what it is about roofs. I think roofs might actually be the bane of my building experience when it comes to Minecraft. I always struggle the most with roofs. They always look too rigid or too... I don't know what it is, but I always struggle the most with them, and they always take me the longest. I probably spent longer on the roof for this barn than I did the whole rest of it all combined. So yeah, but again, it's just trial and error. So I've just kind of been adding in different things. Like at first I was all acacia slabs on top, but then I realized that was just too much. It just needed a bit of contrast or something to break up a little bit. So I started adding in some spruce there on the sides, just kind of break it up a little bit. I added in some stair blocks and some wall blocks on top, and that actually made all the difference. And then even at the front bit on this little lip, I actually added in a few brick slabs just to even break up that acacia sort of look a little bit, and it's made all the difference, and I'm really happy. So the final addition to add is just a source of water for our horse, and I think now it is finally done. This episode really has been a blast. We've really gone back to the basics and tackled so many of the little things that I've just not really thought of or really tried in quite a while. And it's been so much fun. We've got a lot done, and I am so looking forward to what we can get up to next. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.